This video is about my one-car garage workshop and about how I got it ready for my biggest project yet. It is one of my favorite places in the world. In here I built many things over the years, from stair railings to custom gym equipment. Now I have committed to build rather ridiculous equipment for the strength trials, an upcoming fitness competition. But before I get started, it was time to give my workshop the makeover it truly deserved. To start the project, I planned a functional accent wall above my secondary workbench that incorporates the logo of the strength trials. I was about to bring an old bed frame to the dumpster when I realized that these knobs would look really good on the wall, and I figured I can hang some tools on it. At first, I drew up a sketch of the wall design and started to cut the pentagon on top of the scale. So I set the miter saw to 36 degrees and put on a stop block to get 5 pieces of the same length. Then I cut off the end piece, flipped around the board and cut again to get the first piece. After repeating this step 4 more times, I had all the pieces for the pentagon. And a couple cuts later, it started to look like a scale. And then it was time to drill holes into the boards, because I will hang them up on a brick wall. If you're wondering right now why the drill is so wobbly, that's because I quickly grabbed the drill that usually powers the train that I built for my kids. It works really well, but it turns out that it's not the best idea for the longevity of a power drill, especially if your kids keep flooring the pedal. Anyway, back in the garage, it was time to mark where the scale should hang and where I have to drill holes in the wall. I put plastic anchors into the holes and put up the pieces temporarily before painting the wall, just to make sure everything works out the way I imagined it. I used black zinc screws because I was planning to paint the boards black later on. That means I don't have to cover up the screws in the end. I used a level to make sure everything is straight. I also used this self-leveling laser, which was really helpful. But sometimes you just can't beat more traditional measuring methods, like one piece of scrap wood up and one piece of scrap wood to the left. Or, of course, the more advanced, one piece of scrap wood plus one piece of scrap metal to the side. Then I marked the holes with a broken pencil and started drilling. It's hard to say which method is better, but of course you can also combine them. For example, when the laser needs to go up higher exactly by 3 scrap pieces plus a welding table. After drilling a lot more holes, putting in anchors and putting up the boards, all that was left were the trays for the scale. I decided to hang them up on chains that I had left from my previous project. I cut them to the right length with my angle grinder and made some small gaps to hook into ring screws. Then I made sure that everything is level and marked where to drill the last couple of holes. Finally, the whole scale was up on the wall, but I had to take it all down again before I paint the wall and spray paint the scale. I decided to paint the scale black and chose a dark grey for the wall. Painting is something that I don't really enjoy. So I told myself the garage would get too dark if I paint everything. But I also didn't want the garage to look unfinished. So I decided to paint some diagonal stripes in the hope to spend less time painting. And that was my first big mistake. But it actually started out great. I found an easy way to tape the diagonals evenly and covered a lot of ground quickly. But I did just grab some random old painter's tape I had laying around. And during this process I noticed that the plastering on the wall was really rough. But my focus was on finishing the painting quickly. Also, my project already started to gather some attention. So basically, there was no turning back. Finally, it was time to paint the stripes, remove the tape and see how it turned out. And it looked really bad. The tape was not strong enough to provide a sharp line on the rough plastering, but it was strong enough to remove the white paint from the wall. That was disappointing. And it also meant I would spend a lot more time painting. I grabbed some white paint and asked my daughter if I can use one of her small brushes for a couple of days. Using a ruler and a brush turned out to be the best way to save the stripes. But that also meant that my attempt to spend less time painting had officially failed. So here's a montage of me trying not to lose my mind while I keep on painting. Painting the scale and putting it back up on the wall went without any further hiccups, and I was quite happy about how it turned out. Then it was time to build a new secondary workbench / assembly table, because my old one was just a beer table. Luckily, my local hardware store had this countertop on sale for about 40 bucks, and I figured I can build a nice workbench out of it. My original plans changed a bit when I noticed that the lumber I had left was completely warped. But I had about 2 hours of free time on my hands, and I wasn't gonna waste that on another trip to the hardware store. I just used a couple of clamps and a reasonable amount of screws to fix the issue. For the base of the workbench, I had these 2 table legs standing around in my garage. We originally bought them for our dining table, because my wife thought they just look nicer than the ones that were supposed to go with the dining table. But they were really shaky. And after a couple of years we finally got the original table legs. And these 2 ended up in my garage. I know shaky table legs are not the ideal base for a workbench, but I had a plan to make it more stable. At first I made the holes of the table legs a bit bigger, so I can actually fit some proper screws in there. This alone was actually enough to make the table a lot more stable, and there was no shaking at all anymore. But now it was time to turn the table into a functional workbench. Since the beginning of the garage project, I was looking at these old pegboards, thinking they would look really cool if I can integrate them into the table base. I played around with a couple of ideas and then just grabbed a bunch of scrap wood and started eyeballing it. I was rushing this whole project quite a bit because I was eager to start building the next piece of gym equipment in here. Also because I enjoy metalwork a lot more than whatever I was doing here. But I did like how the new background was making the video already look a lot better. Anyway, I screwed together the frame for the pegboards and ended up using just the same color I already used for the wall. This is not gonna provide the nicest finish, but really doesn't have to. In the end, most of it will be covered by the pegboards anyway. I connected the frame to the workbench and put on the pegboards. And it was really nice to see how it all came together. Building the second side of the workbench was a lot quicker, because I already knew what to look out for. I just threw together a couple of pieces of scrap wood, put some paint on it, and installed the pegboards. I also added a brace at the bottom of the workbench to make it even more stable. I simply drilled through the table legs and connected them with a wooden board. that I actually had to buy this time because I was running low on scrap wood, at least in that size. Now it was finally time to remove the rust from the garage floor, using a normal rust removal liquid. While I was at it, I also used acetone to remove old paint stains from the epoxy floor. In my experience, the epoxy does not get damaged at all, as long as the acetone doesn't stay on the floor for too long. But now it was finally time to hang up some tools and add some finishing touches. I also put a camera mount on the ceiling on top of the new workbench to get some good overhead shots. This addition seemed necessary because while filming this project I got a lot of useless clips of my back and my arms blocking what I was working on. The camera mount can also be moved to the side of the workbench where I built a stand for my new magnetic drill. The stand for the mag drill basically allows me to use it like a drill press, but it also has a center function that allows me to drill perfectly center holes into square tubing of different sizes without any need to measure. This will be quite helpful for many of the projects I have lined up, where I build extraordinary and frankly quite ridiculous gym equipment for an upcoming strength competition. I will also make a separate video for the full build of the magnetic drill stand. The camera mount can also be moved to the front if I set up my fixture table that fits right between the backboards. But the magnetic drill was not the only new equipment for my workshop. The best addition was probably this one piece. It has a strong and elegant chrome-plated frame. 6 precision bearings allow a smooth 360-degree adjustment. It comes with a hydraulic cylinder with a capacity of 300 pounds and a detachable backrest. Yes, I'm talking about a chair. I don't know why I never had a chair in my workshop. I would just stand all day, even when I just measure materials, mark where to drill and cut, or prepare tools. But after thinking about it for a while, I came to the conclusion that being uncomfortable and hunched over the workbench is not a mandatory part of most building processes. I highly encourage you giving it a try. All that was left to do now was clean up the rest of the workshop, organize the scrap metal in flat, round, square and U-frame pieces, and just making sure all the tools have their place. I was quite happy about how it all turned out. The garage makeover was done for now. And that meant it was finally time to build the first piece for the strength trials.